That is what you should be looking for. A man who could stand up and do what he has to do.
That is why I was trying to
Don't
get
just
to.
look at dollars and cents.
Where is the line of too young? And is it at 18?
And if they leave these children unattended, the future does not look bright at all.
Guys, what do you think church people are afraid of when it comes to speaking openly about sex?
This is before marriage.
Before, yes?
Wait.
Listen. I just asked. Calm down.
Hold on. This is before marriage. While Welcome once more again to another edition of the Talk Heavy podcast. I'm yours truly, Justice. Here to keep the vibe light, but the talk heavy, of course, and we have a heavy conversation. Today, it's Wednesday, the 7th of September 2022. The year almost finished already. Soon, we're going to be hearing Christmas music on the radio. People are going to be in the cities in Port of Spain, Shogun and Zarima, with pushing music, and we're going to be hearing Parang. All right? The year is almost finished. And 2023 is almost here. I want to say a special good evening to our friends on the live right now via social media. Facebook, we are live on the Mended Studios Facebook page and the Talk Heavy Podcast Facebook page. And today, we are back on YouTube, right? So we solved our problems, right? We back on YouTube and we live for all the non-Facebook people, all right? Also, good news, starting next Wednesday from 7 p.m., of course, we are going to be live on WESN Content Capital. All right, I should have our applause sound effect there. Next week, we go get that ready for next week, right? So, guys, remember, we want to encourage you to share the live. All right, tag your friends, your family. This is a very important conversation. Topic for today: choose wisely and avoid abuse. We're talking domestic abuse, right? And that's one of the things that's been plaguing Trinidad and Tobago for quite a while, from the beginning of time, right? And of course, here to have this very important conversation with me, with all of us, all right, we have Mr. Kevin Liverpool. He is a domestic violence activist, and Dr. Carolyn Alexis Thomas, all right, health sociologist and self-care wellness coach. Good evening, Mr. Liverpool, Mrs. Thomas. How are you?
Fine.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So, very important conversation, very important topic. All right, I had to reach out and try to get some specialists, some people, who deal with this on a regular basis. All right. I know this has been a serious issue, especially in Trinidad and Tobago. All right. What are some of the reasons how that people end up in these relationships? How does, you could be with somebody, you don't know them 100%, you try to get to know them, and then one day things just escalate. They're unable to manage their anger, manage their emotions, and they just start hitting you. All right. What are some of the reasons men and women might stay in these type of abusive relationships?
Yeah, I can go first if you like, Justice.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, when I was contacted about the topic, choose wisely, avoid abuse, I thought about it for a long time. It is a heavy topic. We've heard senior persons in the government, for example,
right,
encourage women to choose their partners better. We've heard that from political platforms. We've heard that type of encouragement, that it comes down to choice. But from my work in gender-based violence, I recognize that it's very complicated. First of all, no one goes into a relationship expecting abuse or wanting abuse.
Yeah.
I remember someone, and I've heard this several times. So I remember someone saying, like how girls nowadays they like that. They don't want no good man. They like that kind of treatment. And I was trying to understand what it meant, because I don't think that the average person, a reasonable individual, enters an intimate relationship with the expectation to be harmed and to experience hurt. So I want to start there with my contribution that it is complicated, especially when we're dealing with matters of the heart, when we're dealing with love. It is very complicated. What I know as well, and then I will pass it on to the doctor, what I know as well is often there are no red flags and warning signs initially, right? Most of my work is with men, and what the research shows us is that the majority of persons who use violence in relationships are men. And what different research from different places also shows is that oftentimes the men who use violence in relationships, when they are described outside of the home. So, for example, if you meet them at their work, if you meet them in a sweat, if you meet them uh, in an informal setting, they are often described as the nicest person in the room.
Yeah.
They don't exhibit that type of behavior that they would exhibit at home. So, oftentimes at the start of the relationship, it's very difficult to say how this is going to pan out. I'll pause there for the moment to allow my colleague to come in.
They're very interesting. As you say, you deal with men. We could come back to that, right?
So,
Doctor?
Yes. Okay, there, as I said, there are no red flags when it comes to entering a relationship. But from my experience, and of course from being a sociologist, to study domestic violence. And first of all, domestic violence is a social problem, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the world. Right? A social problem is a problem affecting a few or involving a few, but affecting many. Right? Affecting many. That's what makes it a social problem. Because it's not only just the family alone is involved. It's a community, it's a country. Because resources have to be put in place to address domestic violence. And then because of where you're located in the world, if you're a developing or a developed country, there are different responses. So therefore, it's not just the home and, worse yet, in the bedroom, intimate partner violence. So that's number one. Recognize that it is a social problem that needs to be addressed by all levels. The second thing about expectation about girls, especially girls, because women are seen as the lower end. As we had a discussion earlier on, I'm not using the word victim. I prefer to use the word survivor. So survivors of domestic violence tend to be female, and perpetrators tend to be male. Again, that's because of the power dynamics in society. Man is in charge of the house. Man is in charge of the resources. Right? We have the masculine qualities, the masculine energy versus the feminine energy, etc. going on. And so therefore, some women, depending on the culture they come from, and it could be culture, it could be societal, the society they're in, or the strata of the economy that they're in, they expect, and even race. Yes, racial connotations as well, or racial stroke ethnic. There's an expectation of husband controlling the wife. If he doesn't know how to listen to you, the instructions will be beat her. So it becomes part of the norm in certain parts of society. Before it was licks, a cut tail. Yeah, I wouldn't use the other word they would use. And now it now have a name called domestic violence. But those action, as you rightly said, started a long time ago. This is not new. The murders are not new. It now have a name called domestic we as society is going to respond and change the narrative around this scourge, like any other scourge affecting society.
Yeah, very very interesting. So the culture really has a lot to play with the whole issue as well, because a lot of times you would hear certain trends, certain statements that people typically make, boy, if she not doing what she too slapped that, she doesn't know that you love she. Or especially on social media, as you would have mentioned, Kevin, that you deal with men who are victims or survivors. I think the culture is very toxic, especially when it comes to men, because men are victims too. A lot of the times you would see posts and memes and that type of thing, shaming men who, like in videos, they're being abused, the woman beating them. You taking that, use our mucks, use our imps. You understand? How do you see that, and how do you respond to these type of things? What would your comments be on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I want to pick up where my colleague left off, and she was, painting this broad picture of society. And I think that's an important place to start when working with men, helping men understand the society, the cultural context that we live in. And one of the things that we know, and one of the ways that we describe society in my work, is in terms of a patriarchy, right? And I want to thank my colleague for paving the way for me to bring in these concepts. So we describe it as a patriarchy, which really means that men as a group are given more power and privilege than women as a group. This is not to say that there aren't men who have no power or no privilege, or there are no women that have power and privilege. What it says is, when we look at men as a group, men have power and privilege, and women as a group have less power. And we can say that based on certain things that we see. So when we think about political leadership, for example, those are spaces that are more occupied by men, right? When we think about business leadership, even though there are women leaders, it's generally a space where we ascribe to men. And some people believe that it's the natural place of men to lead. When we enter the home, we see those types of values being reproduced as well, where men are considered the head of the homes, where men have that final say in decision making. And those are manifestations of a patriarchal society, right? And I mean, there are others in terms of like the gender pay gap and, limited opportunities for women and girls in different fields and so on. And it's important to help men understand that in a patriarchal society, the first act of violence is not violence against women. The first act of violence is violence inflicted upon men and boys in a patriarchal society. And what is required of men and boys is what the author, the feminist author, Bell Hooks, describes as a psychic mutilation, where we men and boys, must castrate the emotional parts of ourselves. We hear it from very young. Boys don't cry. Why are you crying? Is a girl? So we are forced to castrate those parts of us. And the only legitimate feeling that we can express is anger. And if we don't do it, other men and boys within this patriarchal society will assault our self-esteem. So if their boy is crying at school, other boys will call him names. right? And some of them may be very derogatory, but most of them are linked to femininity. So they will call him a girl, or they will call him other names that I don't want to mention on the program, but names associated with women, right? And that's the first act of violence within society, where men and boys have to now fit into this box where we must be strong all the time. We must not show any signs of vulnerability or weaknesses. And we must exert dominance over ourselves in controlling our emotions. We must exert dominance over other men, and we must exert dominance over women. And that sets up what is called a triad of violence. Violence that we exhibit over ourselves as men, in first denying ourselves the right to feel and express the full range of human emotion, but also violence in terms of how we take care of ourselves. So men, if you're injured, if you have a health issue, you may not go to the hospital because you know what, you're a man, you can handle it. You're a man. You're not soft. You're a man. Right? So that type of violence we exhibit upon ourselves. When we look at how men commit suicide, it's often in a very violent way. Both men and women commit suicide, but what the data shows is that men commit suicide in more violent ways, using guns and ropes, while women may take pills. The second area is violence against other men, and we see the high levels of gang violence in society and bullying. And then the third type of violence that holds up this triad is violence against women. So to answer your question, how do we help men navigate these issues? It's first helping them understand the context within which we live. And it's a context where the way in which we define masculinity, the way in which we define manhood, is built around power and control. And the way we maintain that power and control is through violence. Pausing there for now.
I guess the foundation, the root, I highlighted a lot of things there even as a boy. A lot of times we're taught to, don't cry, and all of that. Don't show emotions and whatnot. But question, I'm thinking, do you think that it's healthy to have a decent, healthy balance when it comes to proper management of emotions, and at the same time not being excessively vulnerable as a man? Because women do look to us for protection, right? By nature, right? And the weakest of the tribe is the least the least attractive to the woman. You understand, when it comes to these type of things. So what is it that we're supposed to have a healthy balance, or just two extremes?
Well, I will step in there to say that when it comes to now, we can see evidence of the extreme. So as society, we have to go back and go like, okay, what it is you're going to accept? And every society is different. That makes it even more complicated. I say it is different when it comes to economic strata. Because what will be normal for the lowest end of the economic strata, that's the poorest of the poor, is different from the richest of the rich. And all the people in between. That's race. Then you come to the kind of society we have. The more affluent the society, and media, cell phone, car, 3 cars, gated community, kind of all those things, it's a different job as opposed to a squatting community. And then we have the issue again of ethnicity. Again, what's expected of people of African descent, Indian descent, Chinese descent, Syrian descent, and all the other descents we have in the world makes it complicated. But going back to what Mr. Liverpool was talking about here, and he said it quite nicely about how men are socialized from the beginning to the end. What do? I say we need to have more of these conversations. Because as women, we make the boys who grow into men. And today, there's a young man who's going to turn violent tomorrow. Why is that? Are we supposed to be more intelligent now than 20 years ago? What it is we have to stop doing or start doing, so that on the next time a young man wants to raise his fist or whatever to hit a woman and a woman to hit a man, this supports. But until then, we need to have these conversations. Okay. Yes, it is not a simple.
All right. So in terms of what are your comments on the question, Kevin? In terms of the balance between the emotional and still being revered as a leader and as strong and a protector.
Yeah, I think it's an important question, because even though we are trying to transform a lot of these views, we still live in the real world, so to speak. Yeah. One of the things that I've come to learn personally is that one of the greatest strengths is being able to be vulnerable, being able to admit when you make a mistake or when you don't understand something or can't do something. I find that to be something that comes from a place of strength. However, based on our ideals and the ideas within communities, does seem as a sign of weakness, especially for men. Right now, women can do that. Right, women can do that. Because again, culturally, the norms would be for women to be passive and submissive and dependent on a man. So it's a woman being unable to fix a flat tire. It's normal. But if a man is unable to fix a flat tire, again, what we will say is you're behaving like a woman. What happens is a woman, you can't fix a tire. So dependency is associated with and that vulnerability, and asking for help is associated with femininity. So, for example, a husband and wife going out. The man is not going to ask for directions. He would prefer to get lost. But it's very easy for a woman to ask for directions, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I would say that we have to assess the environment that we're in. So even though I encourage my son to cry and I tell him it's important to cry, and it doesn't make him less of a person if he cries, I also advise him to understand the space that he's in and know, is it a safe space to be this vulnerable?
That's very important. Is it a safe space?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because him expressing the emotion, especially as a young boy, can result in further bullying or further teasing by the other boys, and that could last for the rest of his school life.
Yeah.
So it's also being able to navigate these challenges while we're trying to transform the way boys and girls, men and women think about these things.
In terms of the choosing, why is modern society so on edge or give so much pushback by the thought of somebody advising that, hey, you ought not to make certain choices in terms of vetting or somebody interested in, maybe you would want to choose from this flock of men, right? Why is there so much pushback?
Because that's not realistic. That is not realistic. Okay, let's go from the perspective of the woman. From the time you're 5 years old, you're given dolls, you're given dollies to play with, babies to play with. So it's expectation that you will get married and encouraged. You understand anything? So you've been drilled. Get married, get babies. So it's a whole thing about, your wedding day and whatnot. So by the time you reach 20, you're getting invitation to weddings. You're going to be a bridesmaid. More of that. If 30 pass, and you make your announcement, yeah, people start asking you, so you find somebody yet? They ain't care at this point in time what kind of person outside here. Just want to know, yeah, married, 35, but you want to. You too picky. You understand the drama? Society put a lot of pressure on men. So while in your 18, 19, 20, you can have a list of criteria that you want. By the time you reach 30, later on 25, 30, you're gonna start taking out some things off your list because they can't find somebody and start making compromises. And if you have other things that contributing to it, like you already have children, you might not be in an economic space to make your own decision, it further narrows your choice. And men prey on that. Men prey on that. Because some men will say, well, I'm going to help you. You know, you come with money, you come in with, and men put themselves outside here for some of these dramas. Because any first thing to tell you, but a girl, you know, I have a good job, I have my own house, and when the woman come now, thinking about all these things that you have access to, the first thing the man will say, oh, you're marrying me for my money. But you're the one put it outside here, and the introduction, I put it over and over again. Right? What assets you have? So with a woman who might be in a space needing help, see, but you ain't gonna, you have your house, you have your own this. Only to realize when they get married, it's a different kettle of fish. So again, criteria is not simple. Society need to redefine all these things about need to get married, you know, go be fruitful and multiply. Oh yeah, that's a favorite line. Right? The Bible says be fruitful and multiply. So when you're multiplying, it doesn't matter who you multiply with.
So you're saying
women. Yes, go ahead.
So you're saying the societal pressures are one of the reasons why, you know, their choice in men, a lot of women, their choice in men tends to be very shady.
Compromise. Yeah, compromise eventually.
So
because you have to get married. You remember this old time? I don't remember this old time calypso. Call me Mrs. Joseph.
I'm probably too young.
Yeah, right. I don't know who knows it. Right?
I'm too young as well. Taking it out there, taking it.
Okay. But the thing is, right? The song was from, I think I remember who it was. Right? Another one for Josephine again, because I'm now Mrs. Joseph. Right? The main thing is a ring on the finger.
Right, okay.
So you can flash and say, marry now, even though drama at home.
So you're saying these things cause women to just choose the first option, the first thing first.
I wouldn't say first option, but start revisiting that list that they might have had in their head or written down somewhere, because time go in, especially if they want to have children, they want to have a family, and pressure is on for them to have family, because your mother will say she wants a grandchild. Your friends will say, when they come over, they're talking about the baby is going to take care and you, nothing happening to you, you know. You see like an outsider. So when you get married now and you get abuse, where do you go? I'm here to say, a baby man taking care of you, and he pay any bills, and you have food in the house. So stop harassing him and stop nagging him to abuse him.
But how does that tie into you know, the pushback that modern society gives with the whole you should choose wisely, look for certain characteristics in men, make sure your expectations are realistic, most importantly.
But how can you?
You don't.
I'll give it up to Mr. Liverpool. Where's that list? Right?
I think, Justice, I think the pushback is there because in many ways, when we make statements like choose wisely, and in most cases, I think we are referring to women choosing wisely, right? It's just another form of policing women's behavior and policing women's bodies, which is something that is part of a patriarchal society, just that dominance over women. So I think that's part of the reason why there's pushback, because there is that call for women to choose wisely without a call for men not to abuse. So there is the absence of accountability for men, which is a characteristic of a patriarchal society, male privilege, right? Like we hear it, lock up your hens, my cock will run free. Those kind of old time saying.
Yeah.
So there is that level of control over women, but none when it comes to men. So I think part of the conversation must be asking hard questions of men. Why is it that men use violence in relationships? Asking those questions and getting to the root of that.
But would you say that the law itself already holds abusive men accountable? Because I like to think that the majority of men in Trinidad and Tobago or in the world aren't these guys who running around beating women, disrespecting them and whatnot. To me, I think it's way less than the majority. So they're the minority, right? It's just that the minority, the abusive men, get published and broadcasted more than the good men, right? So there's always, would you say that there's always a constant fear for on the side of the good men to think to themselves, yo, hey, if I hit she, I go end up in prison. First to begin. If anybody see me and this woman in an argument or anything, from the time my hand pass, she could slap me, they go record. But if I slap she back, they're gonna call the police, so our next man gonna intervene, and I might end up either in prison or face down on the floor, right? So would you say that the law already holds men accountable?
Well, yes, there are some laws. There are laws in place for domestic violence, and I applaud that. But between the act and the final judgment, it's a long drawn out procedure. You have to prove that there is violence. And here, we're talking about domestic violence, and you think it's only physical. Domestic violence not only physical. It's psychological, financial, sexual as well. How do you bring those charges out? The number of women who have walked into doors and cupboards and windows, that's a dead giveaway. What happens to your face? You don't walk into a cupboard door. They never walk into a fridge. It's always a cupboard door, right? So there is the laws outside it. To what extent the police believe you? To what extent your lawyer get a good lawyer? To what extent how long cases drawn in the court system? The pressure from your family and his family to drop the case. The pressure from your even the religious organization of reconciliation. I know of a personal story of a relative of mine who went through the whole thing, and this is back in the day, not even now, back in the day. And at the end, she was told she had two choices: either go back home with her husband, or she would be denied access to her children. It was that bad. As she walked through the door, she went back home with the children, walked through the door. After she walked through the door, she was beaten with a fist to her face. They had to grab her children and run. She never looked back. Right? So, yes, you have the law. I don't think so. I'm getting goosebumps right now. Right? Yes, so you have the laws, but to what extent is effective for who? But if you don't have money for the lawyer, you don't have money for your family, you don't have money for the environment, the outcome will not be in your favor, even though the law is there. Many women have gotten their throats slit outside the courtroom. Many women have been doused with kerosene in front of family. It doesn't matter if the police comes. Right? So this, first of all, we have the conversation, not only about choice of partners, but we as human beings. The Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Many people are walking around with self hate. And if you can't love yourself, you can't love your wife, no matter what.
Yeah, it's a really good point you make, Justice, when you talk about is it the majority of men um, that are non-violent and peaceful in relationships? Is it just the minority who are violent? And I've heard um, persons whom I respect who say that the majority of men do not use violence in their relationships, and this would be scholars in the field, right? Would make statements like that. I've looked for research that can quantify it. I have not found any yet, right? To be able to say how many men use violence in the relationships, how many men do not, right? I can't really say where my views are on is it majority, is it minority. What some research is saying to us in Trinidad, across the Caribbean, and globally is that 1 in every 3 women who have ever been in a relationship report experiencing some form of violence from their partner or ex-partner, right? Now, if I were to just kind of extrapolate from that. Unless it's the same man going with multiple women, then it may be safe to assume that it's the same level of perpetration, 1 in 3 men in relationships. But I don't know if that's a scientific thing to do. When we talk about violence, um, and domestic violence and intimate partner violence, the first type of violence we often think about is that physical violence. And we often think about the most extreme manifestation of physical violence where the woman is killed. And in Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately, we have gone through that too many times.
Too much times.
However, there are women experience violence along a spectrum. And it starts from sexist jokes about women, things like street harassment, right, which is very common in Trinidad, which some men defend their right to heckle women on the streets and see nothing wrong with it, right? It includes non-consensual touching. So when men put their hand around women's backs, women say that they're uncomfortable about that, but men don't seem to care about those things. Even the way how women are portrayed in music and in media, all those things constitute to some extent the types of aggression women face, and it moves all the way up to the multiple forms of violence, including rape, sexual abuse, sexual assault, and femicide, the murdering of women. So women experience this spectrum of violence. And one of the things that I challenge men to do is to really take an inventory, a self-inventory, look at themselves, look at their pattern of behavior across a day or across a week within their homes, with the people they live with the people they work with, and be really critical about it, right? But also another thing I ask men to do is to ask the women in their lives for feedback on their impression of the man. Ask women how they feel about them, because I think we may think that we're doing things that are not causing harm, but if we ask women, like our partners, our spouses, female co-workers, for critical feedback, that could reveal areas and behaviors that cause hurt and harm. So it may be very easy to say, well, I'm not a violent person. It may be easy to say that as a man, because that man may not be using physical force and physical violence in his relationship, but there are other things that he's probably using, or doing, other behaviors that fall on that spectrum of violence that he needs to assess as well. And if his relationship is built on, and my colleague spoke about it, built on this power imbalance, if a relationship is based on a power imbalance where the man is esteemed higher than the woman, where the man is given this power, more power than the woman, and it's an ideological thing, right? Then it's very logical that violence will enter the relationship, and violence in its myriad forms. Right? It doesn't only have to be hitting and choking. In its many forms, from manipulation to controlling behavior, all these types of aggressive and microaggressive behavior that have a cumulative effect on women's experiences. One thing I have to say is oftentimes I receive a lot of criticism, especially from men. They say, like I'm anti men when I share. I always like bashing men, or and I try to say no. It's not about individual men. It's about ideas of what it means to be a man. Because many of these ideas, like my colleague shared, many of these ideas, which are not healthy for us, are also protected and upheld and reproduced by women. When women say, "I don't want a soft man," and things like that. It sends messages to boys, it sends messages to men about what is desirable. So it's not about attacking men, it's about attacking ideas about what it means to be. And there's your first guess for the night. I warned you. It's about attacking ideas, that have proven over time not to be healthy for men, for women, and for our families and communities.
All right. I
Yes.
think it's very interesting that you had mentioned that a lot of times women also perpetuate that same thing that a lot of them complain about. I want to say good evening to Nigel Thomas. He's saying, society portrays a good man as being soft and not interesting. Therefore, a good guy is not appealing. All right. And you would have mentioned earlier, Kevin, that there could be a possibility. Well, he didn't confirm. You can't confirm that a lot of the women in abusive relationships possibly share the same men or the same type of men. All right. And it's actually been proven a number of times that women, especially in modern times, they tend to be attracted to or go after the same type of men, especially with the financial standing, social status. Look a certain way, must be 6 foot tall. The whole list of criterias, right? And when you look at the average man who might be decent, the average man could also be an abuser as well. He doesn't fill all these criterias, right? So here now you have, let me say, 70-80% of these modern women going after the same, like between 5 to 10% of men who fit these criterias. So there might be a possibility that they are sharing the same men or the same type of abusive men, because when these men have these options that they're picking, right, they tend to either get swell-headed and start exercising the options, right? What would you say to that?
Okay, first of all, I'm going now, I'm switching hats from a sociologist to a self-care wellness coach. And going back to that thing I keep saying, to the basic principle, the number one commandment that Jesus said, love thy neighbor as you love yourself. And it said many people, men and women, do not love themselves. And they look for other people to fill that gap. And a common saying is very common. I said it until I realized I need to stop saying that. And it's people say, when a wife introduces a husband, hear what he says. Oh, meet my better half. Isn't that so? So, excuse me, sir, for you worse half then. Think about it. If he's your better half, that means you're the worse half. That means that's how you see yourself, as the worst. As the saying, pretty long, you worse around you too. No. You have to love yourself. And if you cannot love yourself, forget about the criteria because you're looking for the gaps in yourself, in somebody else. And when that person fails to deliver, drama starts. Because you're looking for that loving person. That person was not loving, you were craving for love. And you thought the person was loving. And when the person doesn't say, well, no, I can't give you the kind of love that you want or you demand. And drama starts. That's it. Okay. I think on both sides, man and woman. So again, if the man doesn't love himself and he's looking for a woman to fill that gap, oh, she look intelligent because you thinking you're too dumb. She looking smart, but the minute she exhibits that intelligence in the household, oh no, that's gonna happen. You're making you look smaller. You're gonna deal with that. So it is on both sides. So the first thing, going back to, we have to get to a society where we have to increase self-love. Once we increase self-love, we can start to mend that road going forward to be good to other people. But you can't be good to yourself. Right now, that's not good to ourselves. Drama is taking.
So it all, I guess it all comes back to, but everything that you said there kind of comes back to the choosing, right? Choosing based on the right criteria. Of course, as you said, loving yourself, because you can't love somebody unless you love yourself, all right? So all of that has to be within your choice and your vetting, you know? Anything to add there, Kevin?
Yeah, I want to add that one of the things that I've noticed, and it is validated to some extent by people who study like social norms, is that most of the times our choices are not really based on what we think is best. It's not based on any kind of criteria that we set. Most of the times our choices are based on two factors. One is, what do we think other people are doing? Other people who are important to us, what are they doing? And what do we think those other people will think about the choice that we are going to make? Right? And I will reflect back to the earlier contribution of my colleague when she was talking about women and the pressures to get married and to start a family and to have children and so on. You know, the choices are based on these societal pressures and not necessarily on individual preferences. It's based on how do we think others will view us and what do we think others are doing, right? And it influences men as well, you know. Men, you know, we think about what other men are doing, and because of that, it limits what we would choose to do as men. I would share a story, maybe veering a little off, but it reflects this idea of choices to some extent. So I had the opportunity recently to spend some time with a group of young people from several islands across the Caribbean, right? And I would have breakfast with them every morning. And I was having a breakfast with a group of young men from Trinidad. And I took my breakfast and I had a banana and I started eating my banana. And the boys in the group, the teenagers, so they are like 14, 15, they are like 15, 16, 17. The boys in the group started to look at me very funny while I was eating the banana. And one of them was like, "Sir, don't do that now. Why are you doing that?" So I was like, "What? Eating a banana?" He's like, "Sir, do I know how you just eat a banana, sir?
Break it off.
Do I know how you eat a banana?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm eating a banana the way I've always eaten a banana." And it's like, "Sir, nah, you had a break off the top and you can't just hold a banana like that and eat it, right?" So I was like, "What do you mean?" So I mean, I went and I asked other boys from other country. We're talking Suriname, Guyana, Grenada, Bahamas, Barbados, boys across the Caribbean, Jamaica. And they all said, yeah, we can't eat a banana that way. You have to break off the banana. You can't be seen eating a banana a particular way, right? If you eat it that way, you will get isolated in school. Your peers will begin to heckle you, right? So the choices that those boys were making were not based on if they like the banana, if they want to eat the banana. It was based on what they think other boys are doing and how they think other boys view their choice. So what I learned was that currently across the Caribbean, the way you eat a banana is constructed as a homosexual act, and that's how boys feel around it. And that was very instructive to me. And if we transfer that to the discussion in terms of choices, it's similar. The way people think others would view them and what they think others are doing influence choices more than your individual preference. So the group has this very strong influence on the individual.
Yeah, so
Yes.
a lot of women do actually genuinely want to be with these men, but it's just by, what they're seeing. I think social media is a real toxic thing too, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of fake and false images of happiness and everything nice,
Yes.
me and him, relationship goals, and a lot of women get carried away with it. Men too, men too, and they try to aspire to be like this, but in reality, you can't achieve it. It's not because it's fake. It's not real. You understand? So,
But it's how you are socialized in certain things. As I said, by the age, I think I'm 18, 25. When you're 25, you're a young man who finished his education, well, say, quote unquote, finished his education, probably has a bachelor's degree, and has a very good job. And they say, so when a wife, ready for marriage, with our one grandchildren. And I said, child, children, and hurry up fast. Because I getting older and I need to hold my grandchildren, have my grandchildren around me. So hurry up. Right? Well, what was nice to go down the road? Who used to go to school and see nice? Sexual. But I don't right. Okay, see? So therefore, again, even we don't have much of it now, I hope not. But things like arranged marriages, and arranged marriages not only in one ethnic group, it might be a subtle arranged marriage. Like, I bring this nice girl to you, what's wrong with her? Right? And a with ethnicity here. Right? And by the time 2 smiles pass, wedding planning. Huh? Then all about the wedding gown and how long the gown will be. Nobody's concerned about whether or not.
and
They are compatible.
And that time,
because parents are always around.
Yeah.
Family always around. So there's no opportunity to see him or her in the true colors. Still wedding night.
And that time, all along, low-key, she just trying to get her come up. She abusive or he abusive. All right, no kind of proper vetting as well.
And then society does not give room when there's problems. Oh, this might say, leave me out there. Or the battler by itself, leave me out there. Alright? And then if signs start to show, the pressure is on the woman. What are you doing or not doing? Cook the man food, wash the man clothes, do what you need to do to keep the man happy. So matter of fact, it starts on the wedding day. Again, you might talk about the better half. What about when they get married? As soon as the ring goes on his finger and the pastor please take the bride, and he turns around and says, like with me, my husband name was Joseph, but for example of me, he turn around and say, now meet Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Thomas. When did Caroline Alexis disappear? In that instant, I disappeared. And you're no longer Caroline Alexis Thomas. You know how much drama I got with that? To put a hyphen on my name? Oh yeah. Right? I am now Mrs. Joseph Thomas. It will stay that way. So an abuse could stand now. It's like, I'm embarrassing Joseph Thomas. So now he's gone on. All right? Or I'm the mother of now his children. But I'm Caroline Alexis disappeared.
So,
Back to five. Simple as
okay.
that.
I've never heard that perspective on that before. Is that just a matter of culture?
Yes, it is. Well, let us Mr. Liverpool into comment on that one.
Yeah. So it's one of these things that we have held on to as a civilization that really is at the core of patriarchy. So in older times, a woman did not exist outside of her relationship to a man. So in order for her to get any kind of coverage, she had to be the daughter of a father or the wife of a husband. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't own property. She couldn't work. She couldn't vote. She had no rights, which is why and in this case our colonial masters during that time, they had laws that ensured, that women ought to change their names when they get married. Right? That's one of the reasons why we have that name change when a woman gets married, because she needs to move from under the coverage of her father's surname, to now the coverage of her husband, because she couldn't exist without being covered by a man. Later on, we had marriage being very transactional with the introduction, well, not with the introduction, but with more dowry payments, and it was more a transaction. So a man would name everything that belonged to him, his servants, his children, his wives would bear his surname. And that's one of the things we kept on to. So now where women are getting married, some women change their names. And that's a kind of representation of the patriarchal history of civilization. Um, so I think that's something we need to reflect on as well. And I know you mentioned before, that this program is associated with a Christian church, and one of the things when I was doing because I tried to figure out, why do we do that in Christian marriages, right? Why do we change names, it's not there in the Bible. And when I look at like Jewish tradition, it's interesting that women don't change their name in the way that westernized women change their names. Some westernized women in Christian traditions change their names. So it's one of those cultural things, Justice, that you mentioned, that we still hold on to, but it's a cultural vestige that still has a lot of power and influence, because when you get into that relationship now, as my colleague shared, you are the wife of a person, which already it places you in a particular order in terms of power, right? No one would ever say, well, first of all, if a woman proposes to a man, that's a huge deal, right? That's like, how you gonna let that woman propose to you, right? But then if a man were ever to say, you know what, I'm going to change my surname to my wife's surname, or even if a woman would say, and if we think within the context of the church, if a woman would say, I'm keeping my name, I'm not changing it. Those are things that would be frowned upon, yeah? Because the woman has to change their name. Woman has to become part of, and that, maintains a power imbalance in relationships, in communities, in homes.
I think naturally women, they want that they want to be led in that regard, especially in general over in the household itself. I don't think I've ever heard a woman say, "Nah, I'm not changing my name." I think I've always heard women say, "Yeah, I want my husband's last name."
Wait, you said I could interject.
Huh?
Yeah. You said I could interject in the conversation.
No, I just say from my experience. I've never heard a woman.
The problem is, because I thought that I declared earlier o'clock, I'm not changing my name. I'm not dropping my father's name. It's going to be added to that earlier clock, right? But it's the thing about names is that it's not only just in the church. Anything you go for afterwards, you need to carry. If you don't carry your husband's name, you have to walk around with a marriage certificate at all times to prove that you're married. Right? To prove that you're married. You're not here. But the point is, given this topic here, we're talking about violence, because of that power and the husband name, you cannot shame your husband name. So how can you go to the police and shame your husband and say he beating you? No, it's your whole family name. You disfiguring it.
Yeah, I mean
So
that is
the thing really hard, really hard to make sure that when you go into the police or you're calling for intervention, it's a legitimate. So a lot of questions women go through, and men too, but mostly women. Of, was it a big deal? Did I anger him? Maybe he was tired. He had a hard year. He just lost his job. We justify until he called, until water more than flour. And most likely unconscious. He was in hospital. And even then, you still the same. Like, he had a hard time. He had a hard day and he was drinking, he was drunk, and he didn't mean to hit me or hit you with the bottle. Right?
now. Well, I think
So it's the whole power right now. The whole power, as I was mentioned before. The company name, ownership, then everything that you have is in its name. All these decisions that you have to make have to be cool. He can make decisions on his own. But once you have to make some decisions involve his name, you better consult it. No matter how much degrees you have. Again, some people can't further. They finance, but he's the one supposed to provide.
but that's what women ask for.
No, he's supposed to provide, but if like me, I'm a businesswoman. And I'm making, let's say, on this program, say I'm making $500,000 a year. And he making $1,000 a year. I better keep my mouth quiet, because trouble could start. Some men can't handle that. Again, because they love this stuff, you can't go a successful woman. But even though the married one, but they can't handle the drama. So if I say, so tell me not to see mine in here. Right? Is she buying the car? Right? Etc. Can't handle that. Coming home to show you he's man.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no reason for no justifiable reason at all to beat women, to engage in domestic violence at all.
No.
But just chucking back to the name changing thing again. You say you mentioned that a lot of women, they don't want to drop. Well, you didn't want to drop your father's name.
No.
The question that popped into my mind was why have your father's name in the first place? Why not have your mother's maiden name?
Well, that part had nothing to do with me. That had nothing to do with me. Okay? Right? That decision was made long time.
Yeah, and
I was too small to be a third party in that conversation.
yeah, and it goes back, Justin. It goes back, Justin, to those elements of a patriarchal society that esteems men over women. Where it began, I don't know, right? A lot of these ideas, and you're 100% correct, Justice. A lot of these ideas, women are sold on it, right? So, for example, UN Women did some surveys between 2018, 19, 2020, early pandemic, across some Caribbean countries, and 2/3, including Trinidad and Tobago, and 2/3 of the women surveyed said that they believe that a husband has a God-given right to have the final say in the home, right? 2/3 of women, right? And I'm sure if we were to survey women to ask them, if they should be protected by men, many women may say yes, right? I don't have a survey that says that, but it goes back to the point that these ideas are held and are protected and are reproduced by men and women, right?
Yeah.
But not because it exists, it means that it's something that's healthy. Because what we have seen is that these ideas, like, I mean, simple thing like the changing of the name. If men and women are equal, right? Then why change your name? And then why men can't make the decision to change their name to take the woman's name? Why is it always in favor of the man? It's because of those patriarchal ideas that we hold on to, that men have this power just by being men. So those are things that we have to interrogate. Those are things that we have to question. Those are things that we have to begin to transform, because we see how these things, they add up, and in the long term, it's the reason why we have all this violence, because there's that imbalance of power between men and women in society. Men as a group, like I said at the beginning, and women as a group, and that influences the way that we set up our families. I do a lot of work on unpaid care, and what unpaid care refers to is all of the work that happens within the home that nobody gets paid for. So it includes washing the dishes, taking care of the children, cooking. And what the research shows is that women perform at least four times as much unpaid care work in the home compared to men. And this is even in cases where women work. And the reason behind that is because we see women as being inferior and holding that position where they should do those roles.
Yeah.
And men get a pass because we are men,
I mean, I can't comment on if the majority see it as women being inferior. I think I personally see it as empowering. I think that housewives, especially in modern times, who do the majority of the non-paid work in the household, are shamed, are brutally shamed. All right, you don't have ambition. They say, yeah, pick me. You just want a man to mind you, be a boss, babe. Go out there and focus on your career. You know what I mean? Don't let no man, hold anything over your head. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I would also now put in a different perspective. We talk about power, we talk about norms and rules in society. There's another perspective that we need to discuss, which is how society is really finding the relationship within the home. What is violence? What is not violence? What violence for one set of people is not the same as another person, because the man is doing the perpetrating of the violence, he is not seeing himself as being an abuser. He's just showing his authority. He's maintaining control of his home. But if he doesn't do it, who else will do it? That kind of thing. So what I'm talking about here is another perspective of whole violence. How we create these definitions, how we respond. And that opens the door for discussion, for negotiation. Because before, yes, slapping a woman, she says something, get her back and slap. Okay, behave yourself. Now, if you give a woman a backhand slap, you better duck, because she coming back with the next one. Right? So things are changing. It's violence. Is it need to call the police now or bring it to other institutions? We have to continue the dialogue of the perpetrators, those who have been sentenced, and have who study for them. Everything is on the woman or the person, the survivors of domestic violence. We need to talk with the people who are perpetrating, quote unquote, the crime. Because as far as they're concerned, some of them, haven't done anything wrong. They were trying, as Mr. Liverpool said, to assert their authority in their home. Why is society punishing them with all this drama? Okay? So we need to have dialogue and at different spheres of society, not just middle class people talking, lower class, upper class. Whether you're black, green, white, blue, have dialogue about this thing called that. Otherwise, it will remain a significant social problem.
Very interesting. I just got to shout out all our viewers on the Facebook. Let me just touch base with the comments. Lovely Rose, she's saying, I added on because I like my name. Ronil Walcott, good evening to you. I've heard it many times. Nigel is saying, if she is a businesswoman, for example, Sabga, I don't know if I could call people name. All right, I'm taking his surname. He is taking our surname. All right. I did not add my name. Lovely Rose, really interesting. I would agree to final say if it's the right thing. If not, he can't have the final say. So, and that's the thing. Like, I think naturally, women want to be led. A lot of women, I don't know, I could be wrong, right? A lot of women, that's one of the base criterias. They want provide. That's one of the first criterias. Protect, most importantly as well, right? And somebody who is a good leader, somebody who could have a healthy final say, etc. Right? God put men as the head in the home. Portia Albert Lindsay, good evening to you. Nigel Thomas, I don't believe in men should have the final say, but I believe that we both should come to a consensus. All right. This is a funny topic because on one end, some women are comfortable with a guy being the dominant person in the relationship. All right. So it's a kind of back and forth, because I think I hear a lot of times women say one thing, but a lot of times as well they end up with a man who is dominant, or they want a man who's dominant, you know. So it's a complex thing, but we got to take a quick break. It's just about 11 after the hour of 8 right here on the Talk Heavy podcast. All right, we'll be back with more Talk Heavy podcasts. Stay here, stay tuned.
Podcasts are everywhere today, and at Mended Studios we speak live to all podcasts. Have you or your group thought about having a podcast? Do you or your group have a podcast and want to make it better? Whoever you are, wherever you are located, Mended Studios is here to mend your wonderful ideas with great media. Take your podcast to the next level. And if this sounds like you or someone you may know, get in contact with us at 337-6709 or email us mendedtt@gmail.com. Greetings in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and soon and coming King. I want to invite you to the Nautical Hour, a time of prayer, a time of seeking the face of God, so that we can be able to know what God is doing in this season. This dispensation is a time where we need to know what God is doing, and therefore prayer is the way we communicate with Him and He communicates with us. I want to invite you Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Let us get an opportunity to seek the face of God together. He has something in store for you. He has something in store for me. And when we get together, the power of God, the presence of God changes things. I am Pastor Randall Rodney saying, when life gets too hard to stand, kneel.
Say goodbye to hours of cooking in the kitchen. Say goodbye to greasy foods. Say hello, healthy. Tasty, balanced, affordable meals delivered directly to your door. Packages available for all budgets. Contact us now at 358-8649. Brought to you by Teapot.
All right, yes, so you don't want to miss one of the most anticipated events of 2022. I am talking about Emela on Sunday 8th and Saturday 8th, and Sunday 9th. Soundforge comes alive at Christopher Samuel Drive, Mukurapo. Tickets cost $100, VIP $300. Brandon Best album launch, right? Look out for artists like Positive, J Prince, Jazzy, Nahilet Blackman, Fahrenheit, Mark Isaac, JD and Nisa, and much more. So get your tickets now, folks. I have my tickets in hand, of course, and we don't want to miss that, right? Yes, this Saturday as well, Saturday 10th September from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Safe Park Shogunas. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service partners with the Christian community for an all-day prayer and worship. You're invited to experience the mighty hand of God as we worship and pray for our nation. The Central Division will never be the same. All right, it's 9 power-packed preachers, 9 worship teams, 9 prayer warriors, 999. All right, so that's Saturday coming. It's the event, a powerful event, of course, and we really want to shout out and show appreciation to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Central Division for coming out and taking part in something so important. Country really needs this, right? So, of course, I'm here with domestic violence activist Kevin Liverpool, Dr. Caroline Alexis Thomas, health sociologist and self-care wellness coach, and we are talking about avoiding domestic abuse as best as possible. So what are some of the tools you can offer people who might be facing abusive relationships, or people who might be seeing red flags, right? Sometimes the family of the abuser might be warning them too. I've heard a lot of instances like that, right? But they're stuck in the relationship. What are some of the resources? What are your advice you would give to these people?
Let me tell who go first.
Kevin?
Kevin, you go first, right? Yeah.
Sure, sorry, I was talking away unmuted. I'm glad we're on the practical side now, having talked a lot about some of these ideas. I think one of the things that I work a lot on with men and women, boys and girls, is driving home the point that self-awareness is really important, and it will determine a lot of the choices we make, right? We need to know ourselves first. And in the context of violence within the home, one of the predictors of violence, both from the side of perpetrating violence, but also being a victim of violence, is having seen violence within your home as a child. So children who see violence, what the research says is either go on to perpetrate violence, or they go on to experience violence within their relationships. And if we were to add a gender to this, girls who grew up seeing their mothers being abused, there is a greater likelihood that they will enter relationships later on and experience similar things. And boys who grow up seeing their father abusing their mothers, well, it's not a generalization. It's not that all boys grow up to be abusive, but what the research is saying is that there's a greater risk that behavior would be reproduced when they are older, that they too would use violence in their relationship. So my first contribution is that we start with self-awareness. And if it is that as an individual, when you reflect on your life, you experience this type of unfortunate circumstances within your home, both as male or female, it's something that you need to work out before getting into an intimate relationship. It's something that you need to get healing from. But even that concept of healing is something that, because of our constructs of what it means to be a man, men are often limited in the extent to which they can experience this type of healing, because we see reaching out for help as a sign of weakness. But that's where I want to start with my advice. My advice first is, as Nigel said in the chat, looking at the man and looking at the woman in the mirror, reflecting on your experiences, all the things that would have influenced you to now, and identifying where you need the help before you get into an intimate relationship. I want to toss it over to my colleague, and I think we could do a good job of tossing it back and forth with these
Yeah,
practical
yeah,
tips.
yeah.
Right. Yes. So we're on the same page. I want to make sure we're on the same page. So I said, as a self-care wellness coach, the first thing I said, before you think about fixing the relationship, fix you first. I have a, right now this year, I have a campaign going, hashtag fix me first. Self-care wellness campaign. You love to fix other people, but you in a mess. In terms of, again, as Mr. Liverpool said, how you think about yourself. Are you the worst half or the better half? Am I lucky to be married to this person? And otherwise, if I didn't get married now, I don't know when I would get married because, at my age, the offers are very limited. They're getting few and far between. So, you have all these things spinning in your head. So the first thing is you. Sit down and ask yourself, do you love you? God said, God came to love all of us. Talk about for the advertisement. God is important, but you have to see God first, and God will protect you. God will guide you, and also if you're in it already, God will give you the strength. But you must be in a place yourself. Fix yourself. Fill up your cup first, so you can overflow with love. But if your cup is empty, a lot of women, and I'm going women here, are waiting for the men to fill up their cup with love. And if the man doesn't love himself either, you know what coming in a cup is not love. So the first thing, as I said, self-awareness. I said self-care. Look at yourself first, and then you have enough to go outside and love another person. If it takes 90 years, well, so be it.
Ooh.
Because if it takes that long to love you, it's drama outside here. This didn't happen yesterday, as Liverpool said. It's generational violence. Generation has to stop. Has to stop us to fix it. Right? Put back the love. Put back God love in us, so we can love other people. As I tell some people already, I said, you have love for me, you know. I said, what? I say, because if you don't love yourself, you can't love me. You have to love yourself first, so you can love me. Right? So you have love for me about waiting.
By waiting.
Waiting, yes.
I want to touch on the aspect of men being abused. I don't know if Kevin can shed some light on that. Like, are there resources that men can reach out to that exist? Who can they turn to when after being shamed by the general public? You are this woman beating you, by what you doing? Yeah, mouse, this, that, whatever the case. What are some of your advice for men in these positions?
Yes, so I'm glad that you brought that in, because one of the things that we emphasize is that even though the majority of victims are women, there are men who experience violence in their relationships. But again, because of how we construct what being a man is, how we construct these ideas about masculinity, men suffer in silence because it's difficult to come out and say that you are a victim. Again, people may ridicule you, they may isolate you and assault your self-esteem, further victimizing you as a man. I am a director at the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I will share the number in the chat soon. But at the Coalition, we provide services to anyone who's a victim, men and women. And it's free counseling service, free legal aid, and also social services if you need follow-up. That's available as well. So that's one avenue that I can add to that. But also the gender-based violence unit of the TTPS is available. But again, like I said, the stigma may be something that hinders a man for reaching out to help. But at the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, it's confidential. You can begin the process in a very anonymous way. You can reach out through the social media platforms on the website or directly with a phone call, which I will put in the chat in a little while. So that's one resource that's available for men and available for women, where they can get support and help in determining what the next steps will be.
Okay. With my part as a self-care wellness coach, I want to interact with you before you violence gets out of control. Because most of the time when you're feeling that anger and feeling that agitation, guess what you're not doing? You're not breathing well. You're holding it. Right? Or so what I offer, one of the things I offer online, as well as physically, at the place of Silk Cotton Wellness Lifestyle Center, I offer a breathing program. How to breathe. And when you breathe, you take down the cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Yes. We breathe, but we don't breathe well. So that's one thing, something that you can think about. The other thing to breathe stop. Actually, for Global Wellness Day, we have a global, it's not global. Stop. Breathe. Smile. It might not sound like a anti-violent strategy, but just before you get to the point where things get out of control, stop. That's how you know yourself. Know when you're feeling that if I don't, if as we have a saying, if I don't do something, I will knock down somebody today. We have that. We know we didn't feel that level of anger that tear them away, otherwise. So before you get to that stage, stop. Breathe in, breathe out, how many times you need to breathe. And then tell yourself, whoa, that was a close one. That was a close one. It didn't happen, but it did not happen. So this is happening. This is a strategy before you get to the violent stage, of which many people are. So consider having a self-care wellness coach. And if you wanted to put my contact number in the chat as well, contact me, to know how to start loving yourself, how to start taking care of yourself. Right? So sometimes you are the ones who are providing the money as a woman, and you're providing support. Sometimes the man is providing the money, and you're providing the support. It's not I doing the money and you doing the support. I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. It's a relationship. God sent a woman, so what? What's the word? Or English better me? Right? To be a companion. And protector and all that thing. But remember, the basic was a companion, so man should not be alone. But after that, they're supposed to work it out. Alright? Okay? So once we agree to work it out, we side by side. We must take it from the rubber. The biblical teacher from the rubber of a man at his side. It wasn't from his head, nor from his feet. From his side. So we can support each other in good times and bad times. We do not share the same head. Therefore, my thinking and your thinking will not be the same. But we can come to some kind of collaboration, so it would not be violent. Right? Meaning one person action coming through. Okay? So I'll go back to you.
Sure. Yeah, so for persons in this early stage of a relationship, right? The term red flag came up earlier. We were talking about red flag. So you're in an early stages of a relationship. And what research in the Caribbean has shown, UN Women did some good research again, and what they showed was that one of the most accurate predictors of future physical violence in a relationship is controlling behavior. So if you're in a relationship, and this goes for both men and women, right? Um, and your partner is exhibiting controlling behavior, um, as normalized or as harmless as it may seem, because some may seem normalized, such as going through your phone without permission, um, checking up on your details all the time, wanting to know where you are, telling you to change your clothes, that you don't look good in particular clothes, and demanding that you change your clothes. That type of controlling behavior, and it can become more extreme, such as determining who you can talk to and who you won't talk to, including your family, right? Those types of controlling behaviors, controlling your money, right? Those things are predictors that physical abuse is very likely later on, right? So that's a predictor. And if it is that you're experiencing that, um, it's something that you should address, right? You know, we have this belief that we can fix people and we could change people, and we could just love people through their flaws, what we call flaws. um, but if we see those things, it's indications that certain things can happen later on. So it's something that requires a conversation about, or getting professional help to work through as well, um, or making the decision that this relationship may be unsafe, right?
Yes.
Which is a difficult decision as well, because what has been our experience in Trinidad, as well as what is supported by research around the world, is that um, separation is a period of heightened risk for women. So leaving a relationship could result in your death. So like we say, walk away if you see red flags, but even that could
Yeah.
be putting yourself in increased risk. So it's something that requires strategizing. It's something that requires getting the support from places like the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and the numbers on the screen there. Something that you can benefit from a wellness coach, for example, in terms of how can you work through this, how can you navigate this situation. I remember someone was sharing a story about a colleague that they had, and they were in this relationship with someone who was extremely abusive, and they wanted to leave. But what that person had to do in order to leave, they had to wait until their partner became no longer interested in them and dumped them. That was like they're out. They couldn't dump the person, because the person was stalking them at their work, was showing up by the family's house, and was just the abuse increased. So what they had to wait for was that moment where the person became, like not interested anymore, and moved on. And they took that opportunity, and luckily they got out of the relationship at that point in time. For some people, because of how much a narcissist a person may be, that's the only out you may get. Like they have to dump you. You can't walk away. It's not that easy. So within a relationship, look for those controlling behaviors, especially during the early stages of a relationship. And it's important to, especially young people, right? Um, these are topics that we don't often talk to young people about, right? And people enter relationships very young in secondary school, for example. They get into these relationships. Some of them seem like they're marriages, right? When you see these young people. But it's good to share this information with young people, even young people within the church,
Yeah.
about these flags. On the flip side of red flags are green flags. So those are the types of behaviors you want to look for in a relationship. So someone who shares decision making with you, someone who puts your best interest first, someone who listens, is compassionate. So those are some green flags as well. So it's not only about looking for the red flags, but also identifying the green flags as well in a relationship. So that's advice for early relationship. Tossing it over to my colleague.
Yeah,
So we just have about
100%.
we just have about
100%, because-
1 minute again, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Definitely get people talking about the topic of relationship. Get people, young people talking about what they expect. Now, the problem is that women, because of all the books we have read about the prince saving the princess, but when they reach now, they have queens. They are queens. They don't deal with queens. All right. Okay. So, the thing is talk. People talk about the experience of being abused with young people. This is a real thing. So that they can have, look at the red flag there, the green flag is there, and also to the yellow and red flag. And the yellow and red flags too. Right. And we need to talk about that. So how to faster move in a better society.
Yeah.
Otherwise we keep going down the way we're going down right now. But God is in the midst.
Yeah.
God is in the midst. Directing us. And I thank you. I thank the producers today to being here to share my little piece. And to know that I'm available to help people. I'm not a relationship coach.
Right.
I'm here focusing on you, how to fix you first. So that you can go out here and work with, not fix, but have a better relationship with other people. That's what I work on.
Excellent. And of course, it was a pleasure having you guys here. Folks, remember the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 624-0402, Silk Cotton Wellness Lifestyle Center, 785-4308. All right. I've got to say much appreciations to Mr. Kevin Liverpool and Miss Dr. Carolyn Alexis Thomas for being here and sharing so much interesting, very informative, effective information, right? And of course, special thanks to all of you for joining us right here on the Mended Studios, the Talk Heavy podcast, right? Remember, we're going to be on WESN Content Capital, local TV station from next week and moving forward every Wednesday from 7 p.m. Right? Also, if you have a business you want to advertise, right, on the platforms on the Talk Heavy podcast, give us a call, 469-9112. I hear sipping water. I don't mind sipping somebody, some company's juice, or something I like Moby. You like? Yeah, let me drink something and we chilling, right? We chilling. No pun intended. I ain't throwing anything out there, right? So, right. Also, join us here on Mended Studios for the Nautical Hour, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Start your day the right way with prayer. All right. And we're back on YouTube. We live on YouTube again. All right. Follow us. You can search on YouTube Talk Heavy Video Podcast. All right. Put the video in there right before the podcast, and you're gonna get that. We're gonna be the first thing that pops up. All right. Hit subscribe and also hit that notification bell so you don't miss when we go live, and you don't miss when we post other interesting content as well. So yeah, links also in the description on Facebook. All right, follow us, follow the Mended Studios Facebook page and Talk Heavy Podcast on Facebook as well. All right, so it's been really great today. We had a very, very interesting conversation. All right, yeah, look up part 2. People serious. We have our next part 2 to do from 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So guys, a lot is happening. A lot's gonna come. Right? Remember to contact us. Let me drink something nice. All right. So in fine Talk Heavy podcast style, we're gonna leave you with some local content. This is Amy, right? Young artist coming up. This song is called Champion, and shout outs to all the champions out there like Nigel. All right, Nigel Thomas. He was a victim of abuse, Our Bible helps me. All right, time. All right, he gave himself time, acknowledgement, and of his worth, of his self-worth, would have brought him through that past trauma. So kudos to you, Nigel Thomas. This is Talk Heavy Podcast. You're a champion. Let's go.
Sometimes life rough and you want give up and nothing now go on nice, go on nice. When you feel like you just had enough and you can't go by. When you smile through the pain in your life, but you really walk right. When the burden's too much and you feel like give up, boy. Life how we journey, sometimes easy, sometimes hard. I feel fight with your might and strength, but don't forget your heart too. In your heart you are a lion. In your heart you are a lion, yeah. So you feel shine your light and win your fight like a champion and say after me. Never give up in a life from you know you are a champion. Never give up in a life from you know you are a champion. Little but talawa. I say a little but talawa, yeah. Never give up in a life from you know you are a champion. Never give up in a life from you know you are a champion. I never give up in a life from you know you are a champion. Little but talawa. I say a little but talawa, yeah. Never give up in a life from you know you are a champion. Resilient, hurt and strong, and I spirit tight time for me big up my people. From your trust in a God and fight in a life if you win, cause you win I go leave ya. In your heart you are a lion, yeah. In your heart you are a lion, yeah. So you feel shine your light and win your fight like a champion and say after me. Never give up in a life from you know you are